So Brian, the Bank of Canada came out widely expected they did not change rates, but people watching what they had to say pretty closely.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think there was really, the message here is one of consistency. And I mean that in two ways. One is that they were very consistently positive. You go through the details of their message, look at the US, positive story. Even the emerging market wobbles, they see that as contained. Domestically, they see, the strength in exports, strength in business. They like what's happening with the credit numbers, right? A little bit of a slowing there. So a very positive message there and consistent throughout. And then also consistent in the bottom line. Keeping the language we saw back in May ahead of the July hike. More hikes are coming. They're going to be at a gradual pace. So really those two facets there, they're not changing their story.
One thing I think that the market is pricing in is a rate hike coming in October. And that's going to be very much dependent on, though, in the bank's words, this is data dependent, but also, my words here, trade dependent. I mean, they say they're monitoring the NAFTA talks very closely. What can happen here?
Well, a lot can happen in a month. We've got this tight timeline in terms of the NAFTA negotiations. The Canadian negotiators back at the table, as we speak. If we get resolution there, that's definitely a positive thing, even if it's just a handshake agreement, because it helps with the uncertainty. This is something we've seen from the Bank of Canada consistently over the last year, that they've marked down their outlook because they see business investment, they see exports, hanging under this black cloud of uncertainty around the future regime for trade. If we get something positive there, there's an upgrade to their growth outlook, clearly positive, and again, points to an October hike.
Let me ask you, because often we talk about Bank of Canada, we see a loonie, we watch the loonie very closely around this time. The loonie not moving much today, just shy of 76 cents in terms of where it's trading. But to your point, on the one hand, you've got some really good data coming out of Canada. We've had good GDP numbers. We've seen some just strong data. On the other hand, black cloud, President Trump and NAFTA, and it's almost binary. So what could happen with the loonie? What's the range that you're looking at in terms of what the Bank of Canada is going to have to react to?
Well, if we do get an announcement, that really does lift a bit of uncertainty. You look at the loonie and the way it normally trades, it's down to interest rates, it's down to oil, these sort of fundamentals. You haven't seen that recently, and that's by and large, we think, due to this uncertainty. So if you get an agreement there, I think you could easily see a jump up. We're talking 79, 80 cents on the loonie as a lot of that cloud lifts and traders react to that. Conversely, maybe a little more downside, but the way things look today and based on what we're hearing from the US and Mexico agreement, it looks like a positive outcome is most likely, and certainly that's going to be positive for the loonie.
Last question for you. The market and yourselves, I know, are pricing in a rate hike coming in October, but I'm assuming that's also under the assumption that a deal gets done. If a deal doesn't get done, that's going to completely change the trajectory of the Bank of Canada, would it not?
For October, I think it's a harder call to make. Certainly they've been reacting to, we've seen hikes as we've had this uncertainty. Put it that way. You go back to July, that was not a very pretty picture on the trade front. So I don't know if that would hold them back, just given the strength we've seen. I think the bigger question is what happens thereafter, right? Do we continue at a one-quarter pace that we've seen, really moving quite rapidly? Or, if we don't have a resolution or we get a negative outcome, certainly that's going to be something where they'll dial back that pace and they'll start communicating that. So I think October, famous last words, does look pretty good. It looks pretty likely. But the big question is really what comes after that. And then NAFTA is going to be a huge part of that speed.
Brian, thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.